Show.
Hi, my name is Tom Sullivan. I'm the creator of the special effects for Sam Raimi's epic film, The Evil Dead, and you are listening to Balls from Ellwood Show.
Hey cats, we're back again this week with the Balls from Ellwood Show, and if you're a new listener, you're just tuning in, you're probably thinking, what's this crazy show all about? Well, for those new listeners, I'd just like to explain a little bit about our show. Every week, me and my lovely fiance, we actually, if we're not interviewing things that are interesting to us, like bands we like, or I'm an avid horror movie fan, we're usually interviewing, genre actors, or, anybody that really, suits our needs. We like to, interview or talk to. We also like to, showcase bands, up-and-coming bands that we think are good, that definitely need some attention. Other than that, my fiance does a segment called Depravity Corner, where she'll compile the most depraved story of the week, and she'll tell you one every week. And, that's usually something you want to buckle up for, because it's pretty crazy. But, other than that, we just like to talk about things that are going on at the time, hot topics. We like to talk about things that are interesting to us. So, that being said, if you're a new listener, I hope you check it out. I hope you enjoy. Other than that, if you ever want to, give any feedback, send any suggestions, or in fact say, how you doing, or any sort of fan mail, you can reach the Balls from Ellwood Show at wendychops1976@gmail.com. That is WENDYCHOPS1976@gmail.com. Other than that, most people know me as I've been a regular caller on the Howard Stern Show for almost a decade. I'm friends with a lot of, Whack Packers people from the show, which at points, like in this show, for instance, you're going to hear my buddy Speech Impediment Man. I have people, pop in there, here and there on my show from the Stern Show. But other than that, it's primarily about, my take in the world, how I look at things, and things I'd like to showcase that I find interesting. So, hope you dig it. Tune in. And coming up, I have my buddy Speech and I, and my fiance and my stepdaughter. We went to Strongsville, Ohio, which is considered, kind of Cleveland, to Cinema Wasteland this last weekend, and we got to hang out with the whole cast of My Bloody Valentine, the original. And that being said, we went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We had a good time. But we actually got to I got to interview, I am a humongous Evil Dead fan. And we got to speak with effects wizard who worked on the Evil Dead films. He is the creator of the Necronomicon, Tom Sullivan. So coming up first, cats, we have a really, really good interview that we sat down with Tom Sullivan. Got to ask him some Evil Dead questions, so tune in, and I hope you dig it. Check it out. Hey now, cats, we're back again this week on the Balls from Ellwood Show, and I have with me a very, very special guest, and I have a very, very special co-host. You know him from the Howard Stern Show as Speech Impediment Man. I know him as my buddy, and today we're sitting here with the amazing Tom Sullivan. Tom Sullivan, how you doing, man?
I'm excellent. Here at the Cinema Wasteland, it's always a great time.
Speech, would you like to ask the first question, sir?
Sure. Tom.
Yes.
In your directing traveled, have you ever started a scene and you have it written out, but when right before you do it, you decide to maybe improv and go, it may work better going this way?
Well, I'm more in special effects, so Sam Raimi did all the directing. And but that's actually a good technique. Generally, the filmmakers encourage improvisation if that's appropriate, and for like comedy and stuff. And they usually need to get they make a deal with the actors. Is you film it as it is in the script verbatim. And once we get that down, we have time to screw around, and you can try some new things. And gold comes out of that every once in a while. And if not that, something to put in the gag reel.
You'd mentioned the Evil Dead universe. I always wanted to ask you, if you could change one thing in the Evil Dead universe, what would it be?
I'd get rid of that Campbell guy. Nobody seems to like him.
I know I don't like him.
No, I think Evil Dead is like a great American story. It's right up there with the immigrant coming to America and making it work. Sam Raimi was and is a superb filmmaker, and at 19 when I met him, he was an encyclopedia of film technique. And he has an amazing gift for breaking down how scenes are assembled and put together. And in fact, when we were preparing for Evil Dead, we'd go to a drive-in and go see bad horror films like the Toolbox Murders, things like that. And but he would take the elements. You got these actors and these costumes and this set with these props, and here's the action of the scene. Here's what needs to happen. And he would look at that and go, here's how they could have popped it up, you know. They'd done this and this little thing, and then cut here. Oh man, this thing would have been nice. And his idea was you can learn more from bad movies because you just figure out here's what they had, here's what they might have done, a little second thought kind of thing. You know, it's great to kibitz from the audience, but then on the other hand, he'd tell me steal from the best, make your own. Like there's scenes when Ellen Sandweiss goes out in the woods and gets attacked by the trees and everything. She comes back to the house and she's looking for the key to the door, and it's up on top of the frame of the door. It drops down. As she reaches for it, the door opens and Scotty grabs her hand. That's shot for shot out of Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis.
No way!
Yeah.
I never even put that together.
And the moving camera that's in there too. It's rushing up on her while she's fumbling with the keys and all that. And then in Evil Dead 2, there's a great scene where the four people are trapped in three of them, I think. It's Ash and Annie and her boyfriend, and they're trapped in the cabin, and there's some specter demon thing making the Evil Dead force is making noises, and they're looking around and the camera's looking around.
Yeah, I
that's out of The Haunting, the Robert Wise classic.
We were talking about that earlier today.
Yeah, right. And he also said, steal from the best, but just make it your own. And those two bits of information, of advice, I think are pivotal for any filmmaker.
Absolutely.
So, that being said, are you a firm believer in sometimes to tell a better story, the effects are more important than the story? The
story is everything. For example, in The Haunting, we were just talking about Robert Wise's 1960-61 classic film. It's about a psychologist who assembles two women who had parapsychological events. One was a psychic, I think, and the other weird things had happened when she was a child that seemed to be centered around her. Knockings, and I think, did stones fall on her house or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
And so they show up. There were a whole bunch of people invited, but only these two women show up. And then there's Russ Tamblyn, who's the representing the owners of the house. He's going to inherit it someday. And Richard Johnson plays the psychologist. And then there's a spooky, creepy house lady. They won't hear you in the night, in the dark. No one is around. No one will hear you in the night, in the dark. I love that lady.
That's so good, man. That's pretty good.
Very good.
And, anyway, but it's a haunted house. And you don't see a ghost. You don't see a drop of blood, I'm pretty sure. But the ghosts are there, and they're scaring the bejeez out of you. And if you can, I would recommend every horror filmmaker study that film. To me, it's the Citizen Kane of horror films because it establishes the language for a successful horror film. It's all the lessons you'd learn from Hitchcock. And Robert Wise is a remarkable guy. Never made the same kind of film twice. He did two musicals, West Side Story and Gone with the Wind, but he also did Andromeda Strain, Star Trek the Motion Picture. He did a Italian Sword and Sandals epic. He did westerns, he did romances, he did comedies, and what a variety guy, you know. And so he didn't want to be pigeonholed like some directors were, you know, sometimes voluntarily. John Ford loved westerns, so it was a great way to express the American spirit. But this guy was really creative, and and also he was the editor on Citizen Kane, and which created a whole new grammar, a look and feel for motion pictures. And of course, Wells was influenced by comic books. And my theory is it was Will Eisner's The Spirit, because that seemed to have evoked the most flavor and tone that winds up in Citizen Kane. And of course, he had the RKO studio at his beck and call, and the great Mario Larinaga, who was a matte painter, a glass shot painter for King Kong. And did some of the scenes in that, and the miniature work of what was the name of his place in Xanadu?
That's right.
All of that is just brilliant. I mean, and the design of the film, and of course he storyboarded things out, and which is a popular technique. I think like Disney helped promote all that. But that film is a remarkable film. It is astoundingly, even today, it's really scary. But it's all done with sound effects, sound design, art direction, spectacularly good actors, and great script based on a terrific story, and it hasn't been duplicated. The film, who made that thing with Liam Neeson?
That was lousy.
But that was exactly how not to do it.
Yeah,
where they depended on special effects, and it just kind of...
That was style over substance.
Yeah, exactly. And I was really hoping that he would find Newton meat and potatoes, and because you don't need special effects. If you need to rely on that stuff, you're making a different kind of a film. I mean, it's a gore spectacular thing, and there's plenty of audience for that, and no problems with it because, like, kind of Evil Dead. But the story is everything. If you can hook people with the story, and I think like King Kong, the original, is brilliant at that. People will follow it, and they want to follow it. But boy, if you can just keep the pace a little bit ahead of them, and steer them all around and throw them curves and twists and everything, you've got an audience that'll enjoy your film.
See, I feel that way too, man. I feel like modern horror they take a back seat to all the stuff that made horror scary when we were growing up. Like everything I talked about with him before, we talked about earlier this afternoon. I would rather have atmosphere and character development and suspense, and like you're saying, you're one step ahead of everybody over gore any day of the week. I think that's a far superior horror film. I mean, there is a time and a place for that, but I mean, I think that is what you look back now on, and that's the stuff that we treasure. So I mean,
definitely, yeah.
Doing a special effect, do you feel it is better working with the actors that know what is coming, or getting a real response where they don't know what is coming?
Both, good question. Both of those technique works. It depends on the scene. Sometimes the effects are so complex that the actor has to know everything that's going on. For example, in the Hobbit film, there's a scene where the hobbits show up at Bilbo's house, and Gandalf's amongst all these dwarves and a hobbit. And so Ian McKellen is at a different set with a camera that is digitally hooked up. It has a control system, so if you move the camera in one room, it'll move the other camera so that they can mat in. They can drop Ian McKellen in with all these dwarfs that he's interacting with. I mean, he's bumping into them. He takes a cup of wine from one of them or something, and he's talking to him. So, and they're all dialogue, but they're in two different studios.
So I didn't realize that's how they achieved that effect. That's amazing.
Ian McKellen had a hard time with this because he's not interacting with anybody. He's looking at a thing on a post, and he knows at this word he has to look there and then look here, and then there's the drink, and he picks that up at just the right time, because if it's too early, it won't work, and they have to do it
ruins
again.
The whole thing.
Exactly. So they're rehearsing this thing and reshooting it over and over and over again until they get it right. And for a filmmaker who wants to interact with actors and get that juice that you get, that's like the negative of that. And so, but however, it's an astounding effect. I mean, you watch it and it's like I'm thankful for every second they put on that. And then there's dangerous effects, which you've got to be super careful with. And I'm all for digital stuntmen. I don't want anybody getting even hurt on a film, much less killed. And then sadly, that happens all too often. And so I'm all for that. And if you're digitally inserting the lead's face onto a stunt actor, fine.
I would think if you're filming like murder suspense, like maybe a Psycho, where he comes in the shower.
Sure.
You kind of want
the
genuine effect.
I was just watching Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, and there's a point where Dallas Howard and the other guy are in that ball, and it goes over the cliff, and the camera is following the ball as it goes into the water, and as it falls, if you watch Dallas Dallas Howard's face, you can tell for about 3 seconds she's scared. I mean, that's not acting. I'm pretty sure they dropped her off into a pool or something,
right,
to simulate that. But she's kind of looking intense, and then suddenly you can just tell that's not acting, And so, but that's gold, right? Because we were watching those actors' faces. And this is what's important to being an actor, is you can't fake it. We know when you're faking it. We're staring at faces the moment we're born, trying to figure them out and to read them. And so the thing for an actor is be in that moment and respond to it. And so if somebody, I'm sure it's been done many times, but in like horror films, when you need people to jump, the director might have like a air blaster horn. So when he needs to jump, and you remove the scene, but you get that, and it's torturing the actors, but if you let them know what techniques we're going to be using and stuff, but it gets that involuntary, spontaneous, authentic reaction, and that's what puts butts in seats.
Right.
Now, Tom, you're world-renowned for coming up with the Necronomicon. Can you tell me, or can you even remember, like, what your inspiration was or how it came to be?
Oh, sure. In Sam's script, it was originally called The Book of the Dead, and they got an agent who said, if you have book in the title of a motion picture, kids may think they're going to be expected to read at some point during the film. Insert face palm here. And but in Sam's script, the book was described as having some kind of animal skin for cover, and I thought, well, it's either fur or, like a short fur, wouldn't be like a big fuzzy thing, or it would be leather. And it had a couple of letters from an ancient alphabet. That's the description. And so I went to Sam, and being an illustrator, and one of the things you learn immediately is that when you draw something, people are going to look at it for about a second and a half before they make up their mind if they like it or not. I mean, it's like an instantaneous thing. And their eye goes around the picture. That's why composition is so important. And so it's important for when you look at something like an evil book, you should go, that's an evil book, and I don't really want to pick it up. And his book, I thought, well, it kind of sounds like that could be like a yearbook. I mean, right? Or
I don't want to pick my yearbook.
Or a, like a photo album kind of thing. You just wouldn't. You'd look at it and go, well, it's a book, but what is it? And one of the most disgusting things I'd ever heard of was Ilse Koch. She was the wife of a Nazi commandant of a concentration camp, and she was a sick little puppy. She would have prisoners skinned who had tattoos and make lampshades, curtains, and book covers out of their skin. She was hung at Nuremberg. And interestingly enough, her husband and she were related to the Koch brothers, who now own the Republican Party. And their nanny was a Nazi.
Oh my God!
And Dylan Thorne went on to star in the '60s, camp things called Ilsa Ilsa
the
She-Devil of the SS, yeah. And who's been a guest here twice at Cinema Wasteland. And a lovely lady.
Yeah, she's super cool.
And she's a big fan of mine. She spent a lot of time in here.
I have a picture of her whipping my butt with that thing.
Oh, perfect.
That was great.
Right. If she comes back, I'll get one too.
Could I ask, I know Balls is a big fan of Evil Dead, and I'm a big fan of Evil Dead. I just want to get your opinion that, I mean, we're film people are big fans of it, but I mean, some people, it's funny in parts and stuff. I'm just trying to get your opinion. I mean, do you care that people laugh at it, or
they're funny films?
Yeah.
Sam's big influence in all of his Super 8 comedies leading up to Evil Dead.
Three Stooges?
Three Stooges. And and so when he was making Evil Dead, he made a short film before that called Clockwork, a little Super 8 thing. And
when was Within the Woods made?
After Clockwork, about a half a year or so.
Okay.
And Clockwork was about a young woman who comes home and she's got a stalker, and he tries to break into her apartment. He punches a hole in the door, I think, and while his mouth is played by Scott Spiegel, she stabs a knife through the hole into his mouth.
Right.
And I think he went away. And I did titles for that. Just did some artwork of Clockwork. And but when I met Sam, he was working on It's Murder, a feature-length Super 8 comedy. He bought this big reel, like as big as a pizza pie. And so he could put an hour and 20 minutes of Super 8 film on it, sound film. And it's this goofy screwball comedy. Scott Spiegel and Sam plays this crazy old rich guy, and whose twin brother's been murdered. And I'll spoil it for you. At the very end, he reveals the murderer. He takes off the mask. Sam does, and it's him again because he was faking himself as his twin brother. And it's that kind of goofy stuff. So, but in Evil Dead, he was trying to go for a horror film, of course, and but that humor just has to get in there, right? And one of his influences was, for example, at the very end, Scotty turns into a Deadite, and Ash grabs him by the head and forces his thumbs into his eye sockets and goos them all out. That was a little trope from the Stooges where they go, bing, they poke the eyes, but it was taken to the absurd, gory, graphic limit. And in Evil Dead 2, the Stooges used to drag a saw, like a big freaking bow saw over their head. And in Evil Dead 2, Linda's head is strapped into a vise, and they take a chainsaw. And so once again, let's go over the top with it. But if all three films, or all four Evil Dead films, have different tones. Evil Dead 1 has that dark humor and horror. And then Evil Dead 2 is humor and some horror. Army of Darkness is pretty much Three Stooges. There really isn't a scare in it. There's some great stuff in it, but it's not really a scary horror film. And then Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead is hardcore, take no prisoners, I want my mommy horror film.
Yeah, see, I'm glad you brought that one up. I was curious of what's your feelings on the remake.
When the girl's arm fell off, I wanted my mommy, and I thought it was terrific. They didn't want somebody to make a Sam Raimi Evil Dead. They have a perfectly good working Sam Raimi who's willing to do things like that, but so they wanted a fresh take on it, and it's not a reboot, and it's not a remake. It's a sequel. Fede called me up because I own the rights to the Book of the Dead. And they wanted to talk to me about it, and for business reasons, I just wasn't that interested in it. But so their book is contextually different than mine. My book is like the cookbook. In the story, the little backstory I came up for the book was some Leonardo da Vinci of ancient Sumeria had done some scientific research on spells. I mean, where he had actually figured it all out, how to make it work with whatever elements they had back then. And wrote it all down into a book that he could interest the local despot into giving him a position of power. And being Evil Dead-ish, I'm sure it all went to hell because you ever meet a Sumerian? And then their book in the Fede film. So my book is all hand drawn in human blood as part of the ritual. And I based my drawings on Da Vinci's notebooks of anatomy and all that. And there's little parodies of that in there. And also the backward writing. I came up with, I call it Bolskrit, Sanskrit and Bol. And it's just gobbledygook. For some of it, it's kind of hieroglyphic. And I didn't have the notebook with me or any other references, but I'm trying to think, what would a Sumerian be? Well, it's kind of like maybe a Proto-Egyptian kind of thing. Is that portion of the world? So what was on the walls behind Yul Brynner in the Ten Commandments, which I'd seen like 3 or 4 times, and I'm thinking of hieroglyphics. So I'm trying to figure out how did those look like, and I couldn't really remember. So, but I remembered they had just various shapes, and so I just kind of BS'd my way through that. And then when I was running out of time, it became some script that I just was making fake letters with, not English or anything, just some unknown text, and filled it up that way. It took about 2 weeks. After I'd finished everything else, I'd sit around the kitchen table with Josh Becker, and we'd light up a joint and talk movies. And Josh is a formidable adversary when it comes to film. He will insist on his opinion.
So
he's brilliant, too.
You're a believer in expanding your mind.
Yeah, I'm an artist, And so we went on and did all that stuff. It's kind of lost my train of thought, but well, it has to be. Where was I at?
You were on. We were expanding our mind.
Oh, well, yeah, that's where I.
You and Jim Morris.
See, and you expanded me out of the conversation. Yeah, but that was. Boy, working on Evil Dead was great. It was like summer camp without adult supervision, and everybody was just working hard. And but it was great. Sam isn't a dictatorial director. He's not an authoritarian kind of guy. He's very collaborative.
That's what I wanted to get into. Like, I mean, how did all these people treat you when you were, you were like, how old were you when you were doing it?
I was 25. I was one of the older fellows.
And they were all like, what, in their late teens, I think?
No, they're still in their early 20s.
It was still early 20s?
Yeah, like Sam was 19 when we started Evil Dead.
I mean, what's your best Bruce Campbell story? To even interact with you at all?
Somebody asked me several years after Evil Dead what it was like working with Bruce Campbell, and I hadn't really thought about it, but when I did, I thought, I don't think we said 50 words to each other during Evil Dead 1 and 2. For one thing, he's the star of a movie, and he's in almost every scene, and or he's exhausted, and he's a focused guy. He was also kind of shy back in those days. Kind of like a wallflower fella. And, I remember him dropping by Sam Raimi's apartment from time to time, and I'd meet him, but we never really talked, He'd, like, be in and out kind of thing. And I went to a party after Evil Dead with him, and he left after, like, 20 minutes. There's plenty of people there. And, attractive girls and everything.
Well,
but he was just kind of a shy guy. You put him on stage and he's all there. But now he's come out of his shell, and you can't shut him up. So it's
I just had the opportunity to meet him for the first time at the Indianapolis Warhound, and it's on my bucket list since I was a kid, and he could have been cooler, man. Like, he was super nice to me and my stepdaughter and my fiance.
You should have brought the picture of you with the Book of Dead.
Oh yeah, I actually brought my Book of the Dead from home. It was cool. He actually set it up. He's like, my stepdaughter is reading the book. He's going like this, like, oh, that's not a good idea. And then like me and my fiance's trying to pull the book off. We're like, stop! It's a really cool picture.
Yeah, I just remember Bruce as a really focused guy. I mean, really pleasant to be around. You know, he's an amazing trooper. I'm not surprised at all by his success, and I've seen him interact with fans, and he's terrific.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember at Wizard World, and which had closed at 5 o'clock. But you know how for the big celebrities, they sell out tickets, and there were still like 100 people left. And he stayed there several more hours and gave everybody their time. You know, talked, got the photos, signed the stuff, and shared some stories. And not everybody does that. You know, some people, I gotta go. And
I've had people cut me off before, but I've had people do that. And coming from a fan standpoint, I mean, there's nothing that means more to a fan than that. And it goes a really long way. You know?
Absolutely.
Well, I think a lot of that is personal. I mean, you need to know who butters your bread. I mean,
oh, sure.
The actors know that without the fans, they won't be doing this. And Bruce know that.
And every step of the way, the fan demand for more Evil Dead has, up to today, has pushed the sequels. The first Evil Dead didn't do that well, primarily because when we filmed it, we didn't really give any thought to the MPAA rating.
Oh, it landed on the video nasty.
And yeah, and so if had they submitted it, it would have gotten an X rating, which make it look like a porn film, which it isn't, of course. I think there's maybe 12 frames of breasts in the film, and so they went unrated, which had pretty much the same effect, so that local papers wouldn't put in reviews of it or ads for it. It was just Evil Dead 7 and 9, you know. And it only made, I think, the initial run about $2.6 million in America. It did about $15 million in Europe. But for even like a $500,000 film, I think by the end of the budget, that's not, you know, great. That's not a great performing thing. And it financially didn't really mean anything about a sequel. You know, didn't offer the offer of,
right.
You know, to produce a sequel. And but what happened was VHS. And so during the 80s when VHS came out, and I talked to a VHS store seller about this, and he said it was clearly not, it was accepted all across the VHS community that Evil Dead was the most stolen videotape from rental stores.
You know, it's funny you say that because when I was a kid renting it, I probably rented them all like 400 times. And it's funny because every few months they would get rented and never brought back. So,
yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, that totally makes sense to me.
Sure. And it was kind of hard to find. I remember the first version I saw on VHS was like a SLP speed. There was like 8 feet of tape, you know. And but you know, it took a while. But they finally, with Sam's other success with Spider-Man and everything, they were able to buy the rights back from all over the world. So they owned it, and now they've licensed it off to Anchor Bay and now Stars or no, gosh, can't remember who. But yeah, it's been quite a trip. But these guys never quit. I mean, after Evil Dead, they were working for a commercial car commercial place, and they were like polishing hubcaps for commercials. And you know, when you're 19 years old, 20 years old, and you're $80,000 in debt, plus more, and all that, and yet everybody had the confidence in Sam. I mean, I had no doubt he was going to make a great film. Right. I mean, something unique. It wasn't going to be a piece of crap. You know, no, that wasn't going to be a. Who made Plan 9? Ed Waters. Ed Wood. Yeah, Ed I knew he had better chops than that. And
now here's a $1 million question. How do you feel about a fourth Evil Dead?
I liked it. I liked it. Fetty made a great film, and I like that it's different. And their book, I was getting onto that. Their book is, in my opinion, it's got pigskin, different kinds of hog, sutured onto the cover, because Orthodox Christians, Jews, and Muslims won't touch it. So it was for the lesser caste.
Yeah.
And also in the book, there are woodcuts and engravings, which is only 15th century Europe.
So is it like pagan?
No. I think their book is mine would be the more pagan book. Their book, I think, from the type, is Beelzebub and kind of references to Satan, which would be a European reference, and the printing, which would be definitely European. That I'm thinking that the Vatican had some special organization, kind of a Knights Templar kind of thing, who specialized in battling the Evil Dead plague that was maybe perhaps 15th century affecting Europe. And so my book is the cookbook, how to do it, and their book is how to stop it book. And so it has religious text and all that stuff in it. But when you look closely at the pages, and I studied them because I had to do a version of that with my own original art and ideas for Via Vision, the anthology book, and it had 16 pages for the Book of the Dead that I made for them, and every 4 pages kind of loosely represent each of the 4 films. And so I had to study the Fede Alvarez book, which I thought was really cool because it has the text and these great drawings, but then over the hundreds of years, people have gotten a hold of this book and it's driven them insane, and so they've scribbled, don't read the words and all these other little things. And so in my version, of course, I stick to what I did with the Anchor Bay book and put in secret little hidden messages, which pretty much that pretty much show what a smartass I am, other than offering text or more lore. And I think mine's the cookbook and theirs is the How to Stop It book. And I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
What was your biggest challenge on working in these films? I mean, was it the Book of the Dead, or was it? I mean, you designed the Kandarian dagger too. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, what was the biggest challenge out of all that?
The clay animation finale that I did with Bart Pierce. In Sam's original idea for the finale, and we were talking about it towards the end of the shoot in Tennessee, was his idea was build like a balloon replicas of Cheryl and Scotty, fill them with smoke and have them deflate. And somehow that just didn't seem right to me for a finale, because I'm thinking of a finale like a fireworks finale. For the first hour, but then for the finale, it's blam, 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 blam. It's like the box went off, And I thought for all the gore in Evil Dead, we should have, or Book of the Dead at that time, the finale should be kind of jaw-dropping.
Go out in and blade the floor.
And as an artist, I wanted to personally throw guts into the audience's lap. And I also love stop-motion animation. And so I did 12 drawings of a sequence showing Cheryl and Scotty kind of decomposing and then falling apart and then collapsing just as demon arms burst out of their stomachs, throwing guts into the audience's lap. And I did the drawings, and then I showed them to Sam and said, and we could do this like the clay animation like in George Pal's The Time Machine with Rod Taylor, where the 1960s classic. And the time traveler is in the year 802-701. He's attacked by Morlocks, these mutants in the future.
Right.
And he's trying to get his time machine back. They put it in their tomb. He kicks one of the Morlocks, breaks its neck against a wall. He jumps into the machine, pushes the lever forward, so he's escaping into the future. And while he's recovering, he glances up at that dead Morlock, and the skin is deteriorating rapidly. An eyeball falls out, and then the skin's gone, and the head falls off. Right. And it's only like 2 or 3 shots, but I thought, let's do that as a sequence. And he knew the perfect guy to help me, a guy named Bart Pierce, who was a big stop-motion fan and a terrific photographer. And he also happened to work at, I can't remember the name of the place, but it was a motion picture film processing factory or plant in Detroit. And so we could go film a scene, he'd take it into work, and we'd have it back the next day. And which is great, because usually it's a couple of day wait. And the problem is Sam wanted me, needed me up after the shoot, which wrapped in January in Tennessee, in like April or May, when it was spring again. They needed to shoot some more scenes of the Vine attack with Cheryl. And they had a location up in Lansing. I'm about 45 miles south of there in Marshall, Michigan. And Bart was going to drop by. He had visited the set in Tennessee and apparently met me, but I just don't remember meeting him. And so he shows up in his van. We're going to go up there, and we start talking about the finale. And he goes, "Well, I really want to do stop motion." And he goes, "Well, I love stop motion as much as anybody, but these days it's kind of out of fashion." And we got Rob Bottin and Rick Baker and Dick Smith and Craig Reardon, and everybody's using bladders and tubes and pulleys and animatronic stuff to do face masks and effects, and maybe we should be looking at that route. And I go, "No, but I want to do stop motion." And so we drive up there, and we're both firmly trenched in our positions and kind of losing patience with each other. So as soon as we hit the house up in Lansing, we walk through the door, and Sam goes, "Hi, guys, did you have any chance to talk about the finale?" And it was just, blam! We both, "Yes, and in the middle of it, I had this Reese's Pieces moment. The chocolate guy who runs into the
peanut butter.
And I thought, "Hey, Bart, what if we did this?" And this is brainstorming in front of everybody who's going, "Is our film dead already?" And I said, "What if we I make a clay bust of Cheryl, for example, and then we mount the camera down, put a piece of pane of glass in front of it, and paint out all of her hair, so that it's all we're filming is the skin of the face of the head. Then we would animate that." And Bart had this brilliant idea that to make it less stop motion, you're filming a static, something that's not moving generally. So you're filming a frozen image. There's no blur to it. And that kind of gives it away because there's that little...
lag.
Yeah, it's a little jerkiness to it. A little stutter kind of thing. And but he thought, what if we double exposed each frame, shot it twice, each frame twice, and then rewound the film one frame, and then would shoot 2 more frames, which is a complicated process. And he kept notes for each shot, so every step would be marked, so if we got lost or something. And we filmed it like that for 3.5 months. Well, anyway, so here's what you do. So then we would animate the double exposed frame of the clay face, and when we got the 3 or 4 seconds, whatever was needed, we would then rewind the camera to frame 0. They have little counters, frame counters on them. Rewind it to 0, and then paint out the face and remove all the paint around the hair in the background. Then we had a tube going up through this fake skull, and we would blow bile out of that, making sure it would drip down in the hairline area. And I also I'd cut up the wig that was on this dummy, and I could pull little monofilament lines and have it fall. So there was live action bile and hair with a stop motion double exposed face. And it worked. We did a test of that, which I think is on one of the
Special
DVD Speech. It might even be a hidden little Easter egg thing in one of them. But we did that, and Sam loved it. And Sam and Rob, and I think and Bruce were in New York editing the darn thing. And and Bart and I was living in his basement for a couple of months, and we were doing that. He would work Monday through Friday, and then we'd film on the weekend. So I would set things up, and sometimes we shot at night too. After a film, after his work, and it took 3.5 months, and wound up being one of the best artistic collaborations I've had with anybody. We're still pals. His sons are filmmakers now. Drew was just out of the hospital. He's 2 weeks old when I started there. And Brett was 3 years old and great little guy. And one of them went on to work on Futurama and I think Family Guy or American Dad, one of those. And but they've been making movies. They just finished a film called Hag up in the UP, and it was great. But Bart dropped by and I showed him King Kong in 3D, the original,
That's awesome.
on my 3D TV, and he wanted to buy one. He found one.
Nice.
A refurbished one like a week later.
You seem like you really like your work. You seem to you're very detail oriented. You're in some ways you're not you will follow a pattern, reinvent the wheel, but add your own little twist in it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, real quick before we close here, I wanted to get your thoughts on. Did you see Ash versus Evil Dead?
Yeah, only season 1 so far. I've got season 2. I'm going to pick up season 3. I just haven't gotten through it yet.
What I wanted to ask you was, like, if you now that that's all said and done and it's over, if they was to come to you and they said you were the person that can continue Evil Dead, how would you take that? Like, where would you go with the storyline?
Gee.
Could Bruce go to outer space and battle aliens?
Evil Dead-eyed aliens? No, I wouldn't do that.
Now that's usually when a franchise is over, man. When they go in space, it's all,
jump the shark!
Yeah, Matt, that's whenever
You know
it goes off the
what I was
rails.
thinking of doing was what I thought might be. It's like the difference between Alien and Aliens, where in Alien you're dealing with one of these things, and but in Aliens suddenly it's like there's thousands of these, and so what if there was like an Evil Dead plague? Like, what if some idiot read the words aloud on television, and every television set that had that, the viewers started turning into Deadites? So suddenly you've got...
So you have you have like a...
Even if it's just a Chicago area or something, you've got tens of thousands of really deadly people. And, but you expand the universe a bit. And also if their book from Fede's film is from the 15th century, or you could go back to ancient Sumeria and tell that story, a bunch of things you could do with it. Or you could keep what they're doing and just kind of keep it a low-profile, small group of people dealing with weird things, like the TV show, which I think is brilliant.
The last question from me. Do you think the Evil Dead universe can continue without Bruce Campbell?
Well, I don't see why not, although to me he's a pivotal point of the whole thing. And but I also know he's a damn good actor, and I'd love to see him invent some new characters too. And like I loved his Sam Axe character, and he did a Sam Axe standalone made-for-TV film. And the did you ever see that?
No.
Oh, it was great. It's before the events of what was the the spy thing in Miami?
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to remember the name of the show.
Burn Notice. It was Burn Notice.
That's it, yeah.
Okay, it took place before the events of Burn Notice, and he's a young naval officer, or a younger naval officer, and he has an affair with a woman, and turns out it's his admiral's wife. Ooh. And at the same time, the government was planning a way to set up a kind of a false flag operation so they could invade Colombia. And the idea was, let's send Sam Axe to Colombia. The drug lords will kill him, and then we can use that as an excuse to go and invade the place. And of course, he screws that up for them. And but the ratings were so good. Had that been a pilot, there'd be a Sam Axe TV show.
Well, yeah, I totally missed that. I used to catch it. It was a decent show.
If you can ever find it, it's a really fun movie.
I think people forget like all the different great characters he's played other than Ash. I mean, I loved him in Bubba Hotep. I mean,
oh yeah,
he used to be in Herzino. Remember, he was the thief. I mean,
Autoclitus.
Yeah,
was it?
Yep, that was it.
And Jack of all trades, which in my book has the best opening of any TV show ever. In 1801, the revolution had been won, and Uncle Sam's favorite son had a job he needed done.
Not to forget Briscoe County Jr., and I could see them rebooting that. I mean, maybe they'll open a suitcase full of money, and maybe I'll go do some more.
Did you hear the Briscoe County story?
No.
That was on at 8 o'clock on Fridays, followed by X-Files. And, of course, it starts in the fall. So there were still kids hanging around outside at 8 o'clock at night, but they'd come in at 9 to watch X-Files. So after its first season, its numbers, ratings just weren't there. But they showed the reruns of it all the next summer where kids are off and watched it. And the numbers escalated. And had they had those numbers, they wouldn't have canceled the damn thing. We might still have Briscoe County. But that was a fun show.
You remember
I loved it.
Bruce Campbell, he was the cowboy.
He was a cowboy lawyer.
That was a great
Right.
show.
So, and it's that was kind of something they kind of dropped from the story, because the first episode, he's in front of a judge and he's schooling the judge. No, that's the Constitution says this, the law says the priest says this. You can't do this stuff. And but I'd be happy to take you to court, and all the, and it was just really classy, and I love that little aspect of it. But he was like a bounty hunter or something, right?
Yeah.
And with Lord Baltimore, what was the guy's name?
I don't know, but I remember Bowler. Like I thought the
Lord
sidekick
Bowler, that was
like-
it. Yeah. And Kelly MacDonald was that?
Was that,
No,
was that her? It's been so long, man.
Yeah, but she was terrific in it, and it was a great cast. They had Timothy Leary in it, and a town full of women at one point, and these great crazy stories, and that science fiction element with the orb thing.
Oh yeah, that
and
always,
Billy Drago. That was
oh my
fun.
God, I love
yeah.
Billy Drago. Huh.
And darn, that was a cool show, and people love it. It's
I still love it to this day. But
Yeah.
I should sit down and revisit that maybe. But there you have it. I mean, before we go here, I want to actually tell people where can they where can they see all your stuff? Like where can you tell us where to find all your art? Can you tell us what you're up to?
Well, I'm on Facebook, but so are about 30,000 other Tom Sullivans. Apparently there was a breeding program in the 50s to create a race of super insurance salesmen that went horribly wrong. And but I'm on Facebook, so to separate me from all the other Tom Sullivans, how do you do that? Oh, my Facebook picture is a drawing I did of it's like the profile of a reclining leprechaun, and he's smoking a pipe, and he's under a big gray mushroom with green dots on it, and the smoke coming out of his pipe, like one color's orange and red and green. It's that thing right down there. There's a little butterfly on the mushroom too.
Are you on Twitter?
No, I don't. Tom does not twit.
Are you on Instagram?
Nope, don't Instagram either. Somebody told me I should because I could make a fortune selling art there, so I might consider that.
Yes.
It's a good idea, man.
But contact me and.
Do you have like a website?
I had one called Dark Age Productions, but I got it closed down. I think I'm thinking of reinventing it, but with something with my name in it, so people know it's me, and you just Google Tom Sullivan and that would come up.
So for now, the best way to get in touch with you would be your Facebook?
Yes, or come to Cinema Wasteland next April, 6, 7, 8, something like that, and meet me here, because I bring Ken Kish gives me a great room, my own little room, and I set it up with racks up to the ceiling with art prints, and I've licensed lots of the Evil Dead, the Book of the Dead and the Dagger, and so I've got like product from all that, T-shirts and.
You have to see this. It is unbelievable, cats. If you love Evil Dead as much as we do, it's amazing to see. I mean, you got to come down. You got to meet this man. He's incredible. He's always friendly, always super awesome to talk to. He's a wealth of stories. And you got to come down and see his amazing artwork. So please come down to Cinema Wasteland. Log on to Facebook. Check him out. Do you have anything to say before we go, Speech?
I think it might be interesting to tell the fans a story about your movie that never was.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Before Evil Dead, back in '77, I met two guys, and Bill Bates and Dave Hurd, and they had the ambitions to make a Lovecraft film.
Ooh.
And I ran into them and showed them my stuff, and we started a collaboration. I don't think they had the finished script. The first script that they had was Farron Church inherits a castle in Stuttgart, Germany, in the Black Forest, and it turns out that his relative had opened up a portal, like down in the cellar or something, and but it's all this. It was very Lovecraftian. It was based on the Lovecraft mythos, but it wasn't some inbred family in a dark house outside of town. This is cosmic stuff. This is a Shantak taking Farron to unknown Kadath, and the drawings are down there in the bottom. Him walking through the Cyclopean, all the buildings are one piece of rock, chiseled and perfect and all that, and he's just dwarfed by all of it. But I did all this artwork, and we got it a story published in Starlog and Cinefantastique, and the way they phrased the story was kind of like the ball's rolling, the film's going to get made, and so if you're an investor, you might look at, that looks interesting. And with that publicity, they got to go out to L.A. and promote it. And Dave told me that Dino De Laurentiis had offered $150,000 for it, but they turned him down because they wanted to make the film. And I'm thinking, but it's a Lovecraft story. You can make your own up and make that movie with $150,000, which you could do fairly well for a low-budget film. I wish Evil Dead had that kind of money. Once you get it going and have stuff to show people, you can raise more money to finish it. And but they turned that down. And now some of these, I'll tell you the rest of the story, but I don't know all the facts and everything, so I may get some of this wrong, and I'm not going to mention names. But they went to another studio and talked to an executive and gave their pitch. And they were told, it looks interesting, guys, but I'm not sure that's for us. And so they went back to Michigan kind of dejected. And 6 months later, they got a bill for $500,000 from the IRS. It turned out that executive had greenlit the project, kept the $3 million starting funds, and left a paper trail that made it look as though these guys in Michigan got the money. And she's probably getting out of prison right about now. And all I can say is, welcome to Hollywood, boys.
Wow. Well, there you have it.
It was going to be this epic. We were kind of selling it like H.P. Lovecraft meets Ray Harryhausen, because it was going to be live action,
great, man. Two of the best.
Stop motion animation, animatronics, costumes, suits, the kind of thing, monster suits, puppets, matte paintings, blue screen, every trick in the bay would have been heralded as a practical effects wet dream, and sadly never made. What I was thinking of the potential for it was going to be like the Star Wars of Lovecraft. I mean, it was.
How many people I know that would love that?
And it's still a good idea.
Why not start a Kickstarter?
Well, there's that. The author of the script put it into a novel called The Cry of Cthulhu, and contacted me, and I agreed to let him use some of my production designs as illustrations for it. And I think it'd make a terrific film.
Absolutely.
It is really epic. It's a lot of fun. And doing the designs was great because I just got to free my mind. But I sell sets of prints of those, of the 15 drawings I did. And it's fun.
Who came up with Pray You Never Hear the Cry of the Cthulhu?
I think I may have, because I painted that poster. I did too. One didn't say that at the top, and I sold that to a friend, and but I kept this one. And that friend owns a printing company, and he, as a gift, he gave me 3 Irish Giclée full-size prints of that,
That's amazing.
which are like $600 a piece.
That is amazing.
Yeah, what a guy!
Absolutely. Well, you heard it from the horse's mouth. Now you got all these interesting stories behind the scenes of Evil Dead. And before we go, I just want to thank you so much for being our guest. Thank you for your wealth of stories, and it's a pleasure, Tom Sullivan. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Remember, no one can hear you in the night, in the dark. If you scream, the townspeople cannot hear you in the night, in the dark.
And we're back, cats. It's time again this week for your favorite segment on the Balls from Ellwood show. You know her. You love her. Come on, XTina, get in here and give us some depravity. But I'm going to give a little disclaimer first. Because from what I'm hearing, I got the inside information. This week's depravity is so horrifying that your butthole might fall out. Your eyebrows might elongate. And you may never be the same again. So, little disclaimer. So, XTina, would you care to give the depravity this week and make everybody's butthole fall out?
Well, yeah, let me also give an extra disclaimer. This is about a child, so those are extra tough sometimes for people, I know. So if you do not want to hear depravity regarding children, then now's the time to fast forward this segment. So, with that being said, I'm going to tell you the horrible story about Victoria Martins, a young 10-year-old girl out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And this happened just a couple years ago. In 2016, her mother was a single mom. I guess she had young Victoria, and then Victoria has a younger brother as well. And I guess her mom, working hard, trying to be a good single mom and all this and that. And she meets somebody on a dating site. Plenty of fish. Yeah. Wouldn't know anything about that. Apparently you can meet normal people on there. Balls and I are proof of that. Not that we're normal by any means, but, you can, I mean, it does work, but it's very rare. This is more typically what happens to you when you meet people on Plenty of Fish. So beware out there. Any dating site, really. I mean, you can't really knock one. People are wacko. And if people are on sites, it doesn't matter. It just matters what the people are. But
especially a free one.
Well, especially the free ones. Yeah, you gotta at least, pay a little. Maybe you'll get a less depraved person, perhaps. Yeah. No, Mikey says no. Well, Balls, I'm sorry. Balls. Whoops. I let you in on a secret. Don't tell him. Anywho, so we are going to talk now about this case, and this woman, Michelle Martins, she met a man on Plenty of Fish and immediately hit it off. They start dating. He moves in within a month, and, within a month after that, her young daughter is gone. So, what does this tell you? This is probably a bad idea. So, turns out that young Victoria's mom is not exactly a saint. She apparently is a druggie. They're into meth. They're into weed. They're into, I don't know, Lord knows what else. But so her and this boyfriend were always on drug runs and trying to find their next score and all this and that. And as it turns out, the boyfriend's cousin was in jail. This is a female cousin. She gets out of jail, and he invites her to come live with them. Now, this is a dude you've been dating for less than 2 months, and you move in with her. You let him move in a month to be around your children. And then you also now, you're not aware, but he now invites his jailbird cousin to come live with you. But she's going to pay you $50 a month, so, that's something. At least you can get some drugs out of that, I guess. So that's what matters most in this scenario. So, as it also turns out, that even prior to this particular boyfriend, this young girl's mother, on Plenty of Fish, while dating and finding men for herself, was also perhaps possibly pimping out her daughter. So in addition to finding men for herself, she was also promising them that they could have sex with her daughter while she watched, because she's that fucked up that she will do this. So needless to say, this boyfriend and his cousin all became a part of this little scheme. And they, from what I understand, would videotape this. They would rape the young girl. They would, give her methamphetamines. They would give her alcohol to get her drunk. And the mom would watch because the mom got off on it. So she didn't even stop it. Apparently this was very exciting. I know, for myself, if somebody's doing this to my kid, they're going to be dead in like 10 seconds or less. This is not even a thing. Like, the fact that this woman found this even remotely, enticing, not only a child, but your child, is beyond sick to me. And so ultimately what ended up happening, and they would do stuff, I guess, to the girl even when the mom was at work, the cousin and the boyfriend. And the mom knew about it, didn't report him, didn't do anything about it. Until it got to the point where one night they got a little too crazy. They choked her and, ended up killing the girl. So, just to make sure that she wasn't found and that they could dispose of her properly, they then cut her into little pieces to be able to better get rid of her body and dispose of her body parts. So they cut her into little pieces so that they could easily take them into the woods maybe, or put them in the garbage. I'm not really sure what exactly they did, but bottom line is they tortured this poor little girl. The mother knew about it. The mother watched. The mother got excited by this. And supposedly, possibly, even had the son involved, who was even younger. I think he was probably only 7 or 8 at the time. Luckily, he's been taken away from her, as far as I know. They all eventually got found out. They got arrested. And the mom, who technically didn't do any of the killing, I guess the cousin girl, the female who had just gotten out of jail, was, fresh out of jail. Why not get ready to go back? I'll just stab this little girl. So she's the one who actually did the actual killing while the mom watched. So in an effort to have one less trial, the mom took a plea deal and pled guilty to something like, criminal conspiracy against a child and yada yada, and only got like X amount of years. I don't know, maybe like 20 years or something like that. Whereas the other two, I believe, were found guilty and are gonna, or at least are in jail for, murder, as far as I know. I should probably done a lot more research on that. I apologize. But if you look up the story of Victoria Martins, you can find that out. Like a sweet-looking little girl. And, the saddest thing to me about this is I feel like this little girl's in a better place. Like, she, I hate to hear stories about this happening to children and this happening, but ultimately, if it wasn't going to be these people, then there was going to be the next ones and the next ones and the next ones. So it's almost like she was somehow spared of a life of torment. And then who knows what would have happened. People like that don't typically grow up to have a good adulthood and a good career. Really, she was probably doomed to become a meth head herself. So, as sad as it is, I definitely feel like, she's definitely at peace now, and we can only hope for the best. But, I didn't go into too much detail, and I know that's kind of brief, but it's just a tough thing to stomach. Oh, and I forgot. So, they were videotaping this, and I believe the mom videotaped the other incidences before this guy came along, so they could, ultimately sell this stuff on the internet. So, yep, that's what I do with, my kid, of course, because that's normal. What the hell's wrong with this world? I can't even begin. What do you think, Balls? How do you feel about that?
Well, whenever you gave me the warning as to the subject matter, I just assumed that I'd heard it all, like I do every week. But I'm sitting here and I'm physically nauseous. Like
I tried to spare him, people. I really did. But he said, give me the depravity. So here we are.
I have to say, I'm completely nauseous. I'm completely affected by this. It reminds me of a book I read a long time ago, which was in fact developed into a movie called, if anybody's seen The Girl Next Door, it seems like a very similar thing. I don't even know what to say at this point. I can never, nor will I ever probably, be able to wrap my mind around how people can be so, evil. Like, I think about this a lot of the time when I'm hearing you do these stories. Like, you put yourself in that position and you're like, how can one person commit acts of atrocity like this and, they don't even bat an eyelash. They just, go about their everyday life. Like, I don't understand how, in fact, you could do this and function normally. I just don't.
Oh, yeah. You just reminded me of a very important part. This is also going to make you sick, so hopefully I don't make you puke. But, as you said, go back to life as normal. Apparently, after the little girl had died, the mom, they said 20 minutes later, had sex with her boyfriend. And in addition to that, she made everybody dinner. Because, again, that's what you do.
Well, this is in fact what I'm talking about. Like, I don't understand how people can do vile, disgusting, deplorable, unmentionable things and just, there's no connect. There's no, I've did wrong. There's no, I shouldn't do this. There's no, this is, the bottom of the barrel and evil in the pure sense. I don't get how people can have no conscience, no feeling, just be emotionally devoid. I'll never understand that. I mean, I'll never understand.
Here's the lovely group here. That's the mom. That's the boyfriend, and that's the cousin.
Yeah, I'm looking at the pictures now, all these people, and it's no surprise. This rogues gallery is, the purest form of evil. It's just, and there you have it. You have again, as you hear all these stories, you have, a beautiful little girl that's not going to be able to live out her life that, had full potential. It could have been anything. And because of people's, depravity and just, selfishness and disgustingness, like, she'll never be. And they're going to sit in our fucking jails and waste our tax dollars when these animals should be, they're the animals that should be, tortured and murdered and, killed, for even doing such things. I'm a big believer of, capital punishment. I'm a big believer in an eye for an eye, and I think these motherfuckers get off way too easy just to sit around and, to sit in jail the rest of your life when you do such horrible things. I believe is, you're really getting the easy way out. Like, I mean, hopefully they get, from what I understand in prisons, they don't take too kindly to those kind of people that do this stuff, so hopefully they get murdered in prison. That'd be great. I highly hope that happens. So, I don't want to dwell too much on the fact. I mean, I'm physically ill. Like, this stuff actually really does affect me, like, hearing it. But, that being said, we do believe it's important. We do believe, telling this kind of thing, to keep people, informed. I mean, we live in a sick world these days, and, you have to be careful, and you have to pay attention. And, unfortunately, that's just how it is. Growing up when I lived as a kid, it wasn't like this. And everybody's like, you just didn't hear about it because of the internet. I don't believe that, for the simple fact that I was able to walk 11, 12, midnight every night with my buddy, and nobody ever bothered me. Everybody left their doors unlocked. Nobody really fucked with you. There wasn't this kind of crime. I mean, if there was, it was very minimal. You probably just didn't hear about it. But I mean, it's not like it is now. It's definitely like it's the decline of, civilization. It's just very meek.
Oh, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but just a quick update here. They are all in jail on $1 million cash-only bond. They're all having separate trials. Of course, the mother now pled guilty, so she'll just, forego her trial. But the one trial, I think, was supposed to start this month, and then his trial's not supposed to start until January of 2019. So this is still fairly fresh. So keep your ears peeled for that to see what happens. Hopefully they stay in jail for the rest of their lives.
Well, that being said, I mean, so that would be the best thing that ever happened to them. I wish we lived in a different time where there was vigilante justice or there was some sort of, repercussion for action anymore. I don't feel like, in my opinion, that it's enough to do things like this and just be able to live and the rest of your days out wasting our hard-earned tax dollars on supporting you sitting there in a cage. I believe they should all be dead, and I believe they should be dead and tortured, and
right.
That's not even good enough.
I believe they should take you out to, the city center and have at you, let people all have a stab at you. Something to that effect, especially, the family members, for instance, this poor little girl's grandparents. I'm sure they're, lives are shook. And, sadly, I guess the grandparents didn't even know this was going on and that their daughter was this depraved.
I mean, it's funny, and a lot of people can argue the fact, they'll say, oh, how did they not know? I do believe there is instances where, the grandparents are kept in the cold and they don't know, and, they don't see their
grandchildren enough to really put it together. So I mean, you can't blame them. I mean, and it's weird that they had to know their daughter in some inclination was fucked up growing up, though. I mean, most I would say most parents would think the best and hopefully not anticipate that. So I mean, that being said, I don't know what else to say every week. I have to say this was definitely by far. Every week there's depravity, and this is by far the worst. So I mean,
I promised you the worst form of depravity, and there you go.
She promised. She definitely fulfilled. And well, I tell you what, I'm going to end this, and hopefully, I'm going to, get over it, and maybe end the show on kind of a more upbeat note, because man, it's fucked up. So. Well, I mean, that's all I have to say this week. XTina, you outdid yourself.
Yeah, till next time, guys.
There you have it. Peace and love.
And on a later note, cats, as I get to mention before,